Good morning, everyone. Well, I heard that you all got quite a bit of rain last night down there in the valley. We had our fair amount of snow up here, and I hope everything's coming across well. I am outside on a deck with snow melting and falling all around me, so nonetheless, it is my hope that nothing gets knocked off this rail as I'm teaching this morning. So we're going to be in Ezra chapter 3. There it is. There it'll be. It's going to be. But I would be in the house, but everybody's in the house. All the grandkids and whatnot are downstairs, and it's been a good time, and I definitely miss you guys. I'm getting texts. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you hear me? Anybody? We'll see if this works. All right, thank you. I just tricked you. I needed the affirmation this morning. All right, totally joking. Sometimes you wonder. I mean, we have internet, but my cell service is very moderate up here, which has been nice. So let's dive in. What I'm going to do today is a little different because I have a couple who are not feeling well. So I will be taking their grandkids out and about today. So I'm going to teach half the lesson, and then we'll tune in tonight. We'll knock out the other half, all right? So it'll be at 6 o'clock, same schedule as normal, but that's how we're going to roll. And I miss you guys. I definitely do. So the title of the sermon this morning is God Builds Upon the Ashes of the Proud. And there's a few things I want to concentrate on here, but 2 points that I'd like to make off the get so that I don't miss them. All right, and that is this, that in the process of restoration, as we read this morning, you're going to see two different parties. You're going to see those who see the foundation of the new temple being built, and they rejoice. There's also cars going by. And regular snow drivers, man, y'all drive fast. Okay, nonetheless, they didn't have anything to compare it to because they were coming out of captivity in Babylon. They hadn't seen any of this. I mean, some of these people were born there. It was 70 years that they were held. And then others, it says, were old enough to remember the foundations or old enough to remember what it was in its former glory. And so you have half of them rejoicing and half of them weeping. And I think the point that we have to grab onto is that in the process of restoration, if you are of an age where you are seeing things come together and you remember either what they were or what they could have been because you were exposed to, you were offered it, you had been able to calculate it and evaluate it, and it was either destroyed because of negligence or it was rejected outright because we chose our own way. When God restores, thanksgiving needs to be present even if you are grieving. And if you lose track of that, sorry, these are not sunglasses, but they're the only glasses I have to see, and the sun is glaring on me. So if I'm completely blacked out shortly, I apologize. I never thought of this scenario. These are the glasses I bought. They work great for work. But nonetheless, if you are in the process of restoration, you're going to look at things and you're going to say, but they could have been this, or they used to be this, or why aren't they here? Well, if God is offering, and they understood, if God is offering this, then it was by his grace that this chance was being given. He had warned them, and we'll see in Zechariah 14 as we read this morning, that he also warns them of the things that will come against Jerusalem. And many look at that passage and they see the coming of Christ and the rejection of Christ and the fall of Israel, all of this, and the world's coming with their multinational armies against the people to destroy them. And the Lord then launches in, not just from that, but says there will be a day of restoration that comes again. So even when God knows, not that he tells us to rebel, but even when he knows we are going to rebel, he continually gives. And you say, what good would that be? Why not this? And why not that? Well, the Lord is a God of love. He is love. And so if my life is going to affect the life of others and he offers me this chance, which is love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, then our concentration should be on that process of restoration and sanctification. So let's dive in this morning If you're entering a season of mourning, I want to say it again, do not lose hold of thanksgiving, because you're mourning what has been offered by a good God that was available all the time, and it is still available. It is still available. So be encouraged. One, we must submit to the work of Christ. We must submit to the work of Christ. Christ restored Israel knowing, and I'm talking about current time, Jesus Christ restores Israel knowing that they would ultimately reject him. See, if we do not have God in our lives, if we do not have him as our focus, if we are focused on ourselves or what we believe things should be, we are going to miss the opportunity to submit. And that's why the title this morning is God Builds Upon the Ashes of the Proud. The children of Israel were led into exile because they would not submit. What they had built in all of this, they began to reverence, they began to worship, they became idolaters, and they idolized themselves, saying, not just we are the people of God, but you lose context with the idea of submission, and you ultimately become your own God. They became worshipers of the golden calf. And so we still haven't learned. We still haven't seen. We still haven't understood. And think about this. As we read this morning, it is a 4-month journey to get from Babylon, right, to Jerusalem, or wherever it is. And there are multiple cities around this. But within short order, they are about the work of the temple. So even in the process of restoration, you have to get back to the prioritization of God immediately. Immediately. That journey should be the prioritization. That way, when you get there, your heart is ready for the work of restoration and you can build. Point 2, we must be about the work of the kingdom. In our lives, if we have laid the proper foundations, if we have built in the right season, if we have given attention to disciplined living, then I heard this the other day and I really liked it, that everything is beautiful in the proper season. You're like, John? Yeah, I know. I don't typically say things like that, but I liked it. See, if we want things disjointed, even in our marriages, if we have put, and I'll say this lovingly, if you have put the cart before the horse, which means you got married and you made things right as it relates to your responsibility to one another, but your reverence for the sanctity, ay caramba. Give it a minute. This is part of being outside. Everything just keeps letting go because the sun is blazing down on the cabin right now. But if you have prioritized the comfort of the flesh and the excitement of the flesh, and this is about as detailed as I want to get, over the commitment, then everything in the marriage will be focused on the flesh and not the healing of the heart and the spirit. And you say, well, what does that mean we're starting over? Well, to a degree, you're learning finally to truly reverence one another, okay? And that takes time, because if we engage in sexual immorality, if we engage in the prioritization of our lusts and our flesh, well, we don't have any sensitivity to the Spirit. And if we can't be sensitive to the Spirit of God, how are we going to minister to one another in the context of marriage? It's impossible. So I want you to be praying about the laying of that foundation. What is proper, what is good, what is timely. That is the 2 points we're going to cover this morning. I will give you point 3 so you have it written down for tonight, but we're going to do 2 and 3 over again. All right. Point 3 is we are called to be priests in his kingdom. Okay. And if you think about the prioritization, Christ becomes the high priest, right? Through submission to God. He is the final sacrifice. He is the final high priest. That's why all of this discussion with regard to the former things, the following of the feast, the new moons and the rest, they keep this. They start giving attention to this here as we study. And it's important because it was the covenant that they lived under. We're talking about the Jews coming back and establishing once again in their hearts and in their lives the things that God had told them to prioritize, which separated them from everything around them. Even the act of circumcision separated them from everyone around them. Why was it? Because they were to be a different people. They were to be a holy people. They were to be a chaste people. I point you back once again to the establishment of the laws that were given through Moses. Moses had to give them laws so they didn't act like the heathens that they lived around before. And if you read through the book of Leviticus and the rest, there are times I come across stuff where I'm thinking, what were they even thinking? They were a bunch of slaves to degradation and perversion. And if you listen close enough, the answer is yes, they were. Yes, they were. In our former way of living, and as we launch into point 1, you'll see that I'm going to point to Ephesians chapter 5. Okay? So let's go to Ezra chapter 3. And I'm going to have to work with my computer because I brought no paper. I brought nothing. I didn't even bring a camera stand. Just so you know, my phone is sitting in a cut up water bottle. Yeah, I made that this morning, and I'm pretty proud of it, to be honest. So nonetheless, yeah, I was like, what did you bring, John? So let's launch in Ezra chapter 3, verse 1. Now when the 7th month came, the sons of Israel were in the cities, and the people gathered together as one person in Jerusalem. Then Joshua the son of Jezadok, and his brothers, the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his sons rose up and built an altar of the God of heaven. Sorry, there's water getting on my screen. Of Israel, to offer burnt offerings on it, as it was written in the law of Moses, the man of God. So they set up an altar on its foundations because they were terrified of the peoples of the lands. And they offered burnt offerings on it to the Lord, burnt offerings morning and evening. I think that's probably an important thing for us to consider, is how are we starting our mornings and how are we ending our days? They also celebrated the feasts of booths, as it is written, and offered the prescribed number of burnt offerings daily, according to the ordinance, as each day required. And after, there was a continual burnt offering, also for the new moons, and for all the appointed festivals of the Lord that were consecrated, and from every one who offered a voluntary offering to the Lord. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to the Lord. But the foundations of the temple of the Lord had not been laid. Then they gave money to the masons and carpenters, and food, drink, and oil to the Sidonians and the Tyrians, to bring cedar wood from Lebanon to the sea at Joppa, according to the permission that they had from Cyrus, king of Persia. Now consider this, that these reinstitutions of things that should have never been abandoned, they should have never been taken for granted. And this is why in our lives, with point 1, we must submit our work to Christ. The work of our body, the work of our lives, if you will, all of this is to be within the hands of God, directed, moved, and molded by his will. And anything other than that, it is going to have to be classified as rebellion. It means that if we don't do those things, then we're approaching God half-heartedly. And if we approach God half-heartedly, how are we going to properly serve our neighbor with a true mindset of love and a desire to see their best? And I know this for some, it is very confusing to encounter people who have your best at heart. And there are times where, just as it was, if you read the book of Nehemiah, his sole focus was the restoration of the walls for the sake of protection. And if we have a different heart or a different mind, so we see here in Ezra, as it relates to what was the priority. Some would say, hey, I've just come to this land. I need to build, I need to establish, I need to do this, I need to do that. And they'll become so focused on their lives that the priority of the work of the kingdom is lost to them. And if we build, if we build on our own timetable and in our own work, the only thing that really will be designed is just a ticking time bomb. See, if we do not have God in the lead of our lives, our focus will be ourselves. And when the focus is ourselves, destruction is the only thing that follows. And after this 4-month journey from Babylon to their native cities, they were led to prioritize faithfulness to God and their community over everything else. Joshua and the priests and Zerubbabel and the princes built the altar of God in Israel to prioritize him above all else. Maybe you're going through something right now, or maybe you have been going through something, and the priority has not been God. Maybe you're realizing that now. Maybe the comfort of the flesh, the hopes of the future. Maybe we've idealized all kinds of things as it relates to who and what we are. That is actually pretty common. And it is something that needs to be grieved, because it's a declaration, if you will, of immorality. And you say, well, how? I didn't know it was, and I didn't see that it was. Well, now we're talking about what we actually are before Christ. See, before Christ, we prioritized things of the world. We had a love of the world that was inexcusable and was going to cost us everything. And at points it did. At points that robbed us of promise and all that God had in store for us. And we just couldn't see it. We couldn't see it. In our lives, it is easy to become focused on our priorities. It is easy to become focused on our dreams. But if we are facing a season of rebuilding and we do it without God, it is going to be rebellion. In our flesh, we are bound to failure, and our hearts will return to the sin that once owned us completely. It'll captivate our attention, and it will rob us of destiny and purpose. Absolutely. Said this earlier, everything is beautiful in the right season. You see, when we have put ourselves before God, we have broken faith. Not just do we have broken faith, but we have broken faith with Him. We have been dishonest. We have been unfaithful. We now are refusing to sacrifice ourselves. And if you think about this, once we begin to refuse to sacrifice ourselves, it means that we are now sacrificing others. This is not the way God intended it. In fact, that's the way that the world thinks. If you look at communism and socialism, the things that they are trying to institute, even in our country, the things that they want to prioritize, I'm really interested in seeing what unfolds in the near future. And my hope is for great things. But I'll be blunt, I'm not willing to surrender to Pharaoh what belongs to God. I don't care who the president is. There are certain things you will never get from me. Ever. And if that means that I'm in opposition to you, or you want to call me an enemy, or any number of things, so be it. But if you're asking for what belongs to God to be given to the government, I don't think that worked well for the children of Israel. I don't think that worked well. Ultimately, there will be men that come to power that forget. There will be men that come to power, and good intentions, man, they still can lead to bad results if you forget your boundaries. All right? When we have put ourselves before God, we have broken faith. And the people realized that they had been shown grace by God and were now determined not to allow themselves to fall away. Question for you and I this morning is, have we determined that? Have we taken the grace of God for granted? Have we looked at it and said, man, thankfully God has grace for me because I'm still sinning a lot. I'm still involved in idolatry. I've still got wandering eyes and wandering purpose and wandering hopes. I'm double-minded. Well, if you're double-minded, if you admit all of those things, you admitted a double-mindedness. And then you look at God and you say, why are you failing me? He hasn't. You've just refused His wisdom, according to James. The people realized again that they had been shown by grace by God, which is allowing them this process of restoration, and they were determined not to allow themselves to fall away. For us, the question is, have we focused at all on the grace of God that has been given or shown by Him? Or are we now entitled to His love? And I think that's a very damaging thing, is when we look at the willingness of God to restore and we feel that we are entitled to it. This, I think, would be a question that we should apply to multiple areas in our lives. If we can believe that we are entitled things from our Creator, then it's probably true that we have taken advantage of others in other situations, or we have miscalculated our value in one way or another. And the reason I bring this up is because these people are coming back from a captivity that they were told was going to occur if they kept improperly valuing themselves. Are we daily before God in prayer? And are we sacrificing our lives? Know this, to rebel against the grace of God, and that is when we begin to mock him. We have been shown, and we know for a fact, to rebel against this grace is not only demonic, but it guarantees captivity. Turn your Bibles to Ephesians chapter 5, 3 through 5. If we talk about the ultimate restoration of the kingdom, right, then it is the kingdom of God. It is the kingdom of Christ and God. And Paul talks about it here. Listen to what he says. But sexually immoral or any impurity or greed must not even be mentioned among you, as it is proper among the saints. And there must be no filthiness or foolish talk or vulgar joking. What is this all about? Proper boundaries, a proper understanding of what is right and wrong, what is truth and what is a lie. Why can't these things be among us? Because they are not fitting, but rather giving thanks. So why is sexual immorality and impurity and greed present in these areas? It's because we are not giving thanks. Look at the end, the qualifier at the end of verse 4, understanding of everything before that. Verse 5, for this you know with certainty that no sexually immoral or impure or greedy person, which amounts to idolatry. So no sexually immoral, impure, or greedy person, which amounts to idolatry, has an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. What does that ultimately mean? As if we are not keeping the things that God has ordained as mandatory. And you go, well, how does that fit within his grace? What did we just read, y'all? Please pay attention. Please pay attention. Why is the discussion of immorality and impurity and greed all linked together? Because where there is perversion, it is a spiritual and emotional cancer. Idolatry is the presence of a spiritual and emotional cancer. It is the declaration of an absence of healing and just a desire at every point never to sacrifice. It's impossible to see it any other way. And you say, well, I've been through a lot, my traumas, my trials, my tribulations. I agree with you. Many of you have been through way more than I have. And my heart grieves for that. But shouldn't that also then slow us down and cause us to begin to ask the questions, right? So if we have been through all those things, is it possible that we have blind spots? Is it possible we have footholds? Is it possible we need more accountability than we think we need? And we need more direction than we would like to take? What happens if those things are true? Is it worth it in the long run? Well, the question again, let's come back to Ephesians chapter 5. What inheritance would we like to have? If the inheritance we would like to enjoy is in the kingdom of Christ and God, then we cannot be an idolater. You say, how does idolatry fit into the absence of accountability? Well, when we prioritize our own opinions, we end up in captivity. All of these things, impurity, immorality, greed, these are all signs of captivity. They're not freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is freedom. So if these things are not present in you, if they're not known to you, if what you're filled with is anger and rage or offense, these things are not known to you. And your calculations, therefore, will be skewed. The children of Israel were coming back from captivity, They were coming out of absolute, I don't even know, just there was nothing about where they were that they were supposed to be. God did not intend for them to go there. He warned them that that would be the fallout, that they would invite those foreign nations to their door to destroy them. He was their protection. He was their stronghold. He was their mighty arm against the foes who are committed to evil. And they hated his presence. They hated being different. They hated what was required. And so they got to experience the result of their hate. Point 2, we must be about the work of the kingdom. We read this. Point 3 covers the last section of Ezra chapter 3, just so you know. We must be about the work. In our lives, have we laid the proper foundations? First, they built the altar, but yet not yet having built the foundation of the temple. But we see this begin to unfold. And so have we laid the proper foundations? Have we built in the right seasons and paid attention to disciplined living and thinking? There are some who encounter restoration. I mentioned this earlier. There are some who counter restoration with joy. Sometimes it's because they don't know what was before, so this is all brand new. Okay, that's awesome. Don't think that everybody has to feel exactly the way you do, viewing the things that you do. There are times that you're going to, if you continue growing, where you will spiritually discern things. And the prophets saw that. You can walk into a community that's super excited about something unfolding, and you can look down the road and go, oh, but I know where this goes in 5 years. I know where this goes in 10 years. I know where this goes in 50. I know what happens. I know that you're going to not see this place again until 70 years from now. And so you're dealing with grief as a knower of times and seasons, or a seer, or whatever title you want to give it, a prophet. You see these things. You distinguish between what is immediate and what is ultimate, if you will. And so it's important that you teach with that mindset. You can't show everybody everything, right? Jesus talked to his disciples about that. He said, you're amazed by this thing that you saw, but I'm telling you that what would unfold, I'm trying to tell you about earthly things and you're struggling. How in the world am I going to help you understand and know heavenly things? I mean, our minds have to learn how to encounter these things. So, nonetheless, let's keep moving. There are some who encounter restoration with joy, not knowing what had been, and others who meet it with grief and hopefully thanksgiving, because they're seeing the cost of their rebellion. The comparison of the temple they were building compared to what it was that Solomon had built, what was known, what was understood, the magnificence of the kingdom prior. Imagine encountering that. So the young are saying, yes, we are restoring these things. And the old are going, we only are facing restoration because we rebelled. We destroyed in our anger and our bitterness and all the other thing. We destroyed everything good. And so now here we are starting over. All right. It is difficult for the young to see the cost, which is why it is important to walk in humility. There are challenges in our lives, and they need to be, as far as what it means to walk in humility, and why it's important sometimes to even go above and beyond. And people would say, well, I feel like I'm humble enough, or I literally have these conversations. Listen, the trying of our faith worketh patience. And the ultimate outcome of our patience, if you will, is that God's work can be completed in us. And if it's completed in us, then it'll be completed hopefully in those who are watching us. The idea of going above and beyond. Jesus says, if they force you to walk 1 mile, then walk 2. If they slap you on one cheek, offer the other. If they take your cloak, offer the tunic. Why? Because that process of humbling, I'm not advocating for abuse, but I'm talking about the process of humbling will reap a reward. I mean, it'll bring you to a level of insight and understanding where you're not rebelling against the seasons of reconstruction and restoration and even those foundational things. You are grateful. You're seeing them for what they are. And because you have the opportunity, it's an amazing thing. The elder must teach even in the midst of sorrow. They must work to fortify the people for the sake of the future. Often we begin to take the process of our restoration for granted, and we need to be careful. We stop at the foundation, we lose focus, we lose heart, we become disillusioned because it's more work than we ever thought it would be. But I'm telling you, this is why the sacrifices are necessary. If we are laying ourselves down, if we are surrendering ourselves, it becomes increasingly common. There are disappointments in every life in one way or another, but God is not one of them. And he cannot be one of them. He can't be. He doesn't tempt, nor is he tempted. So when we're facing issues, when we're dealing with the fallout of our own behavior, it is not because God willed that. It is because we have, if you will, gone astray, been misdirected and misguided. We could even be deceived by others. But why is that? How does that deception happen? What in us is being drawn to liars? Trust me in this. If you find yourself more comfortable in the counsel of the perverse, what would that say to you? What would that say to you? I think that should be a red flag. Was Jesus comfortable in the counsel of those who were quote unquote sinners? Yes, but he knew no sin. He's the one that changed the environment. He's the one that changed the trajectory. He's the one that challenged them to abandon their sin for the sake of righteousness. See, whatever we are facing today, it is going to be a foundational issue. It's going to be a foundational issue. You say, well, I've been in the faith a long time. Then the foundation should be well set. So we're never questioning God. We're always allowing ourselves to be examined, right? And if that is not the case, then it is a foundational issue. It is a foundational issue. It is about the origin and the nature of our faith. And if God is up for question, you know what it means? It means that we haven't actually accepted him. We're dealing with that struggle. If the author and perfecter of our faith is Christ and he is our focus, we see that he went through struggles. He told us that they are going to hate you the same way they hated me. That today was to be our focus because it's evil enough, and tomorrow will come with the trouble that it has. And the rain falls on the just and the unjust, and there are trials and tribulations for many. Sorry, I'm watching people slide on the road a little bit. We are either remaining in Christ or we are not. We are either for him or we are against him. Zechariah, who was a pivotal prophet at the time, warned in his writing of what would occur to Israel at the hands of Rome in 70 AD. Now, some talk about this section meaning numerous things, but I should say more so that it alludes to it, and that there are some who look at it in that light, that ultimately the destruction would come to Israel, the multinational army which Rome had, and that these would be the things that they would face. So let me back up just a little bit. I'll put that clarification in there for the sake of it. But if you think about when this was written, the fall of Jerusalem is 70 AD. The temple's destroyed. That was roughly 500, Zechariah wrote between 520 to 510 BC. So as in BC, as the time goes down, you get closer to 0, and that's the birth of Christ, right? So then you get AD and whatever else, or the year of our Lord. God knew that they would reject his love. He knew that they would reject his warnings. He knew they would choose self-importance and self-righteousness over self-sacrifice. But he did the work anyway. What a great and mighty God. Zechariah 14, 1-4 says this, "Behold, a day is coming for the Lord when the spoils taken from you will be divided among you. For I will gather the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city will be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women," you read the word, "and half of the city exiled. But the rest of the people will not be eliminated from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fights on the day of battle. On that day his feet will stand." I can't clean my screen because it's a touch screen, so excuse me. I can't touch it, but I really want to wipe it off. "On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives will be split in its middle from east to west, forming a large valley. Half of the mountain will move toward the north, and the other half toward the south, and you will flee by the valley of my mountains. For the valley of the mountains will reach Ezel. Yes, you will flee just as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and the holy ones with him." God had brought the children of Israel to a place where it was only through his ability for things to be rebuilt and established. He had brought them, if you will, to ashes. And from such he planned to raise them up again. Oh, I'm sorry. It's on my computer. So I'm trying to read through snow on my computer. So that's what I was talking about. But nonetheless, I think in this point, it is a difficult thing to do at times. But I think it is important for us to remember that when things are in season, when they're in the right season, it's beautiful. And I heard it said that comparison is the thief of joy. And so, yes, we're going to have an understanding of what things were or what they could have been. We're going to know if we're paying attention and we truly have hearts focused on obedience. We're going to see where we chose the things we knew were violations of God's ordinances and his law, and that we defied his love. But if you are in a season of restoration, I give you permission to mourn 100%. I don't think we walk around with falseness, if you will. But I also am going to encourage you not to abandon Thanksgiving. That you're going to remember to give him praise for the things that he has been faithful even when we are unfaithful. Yes, we were in rebellion. Yes, we probably would have died in our sin and it would have been a mess. No, I don't know why God spares or how things happen. I mean, we live in an open universe where decisions can be made by anyone and everyone. The thing that has been on my heart, and I'll probably bring it up again tonight, is we are a nation in need of restoration. We have made some really bad alliances as well. But I saw something the other day, and it upsets me every time I think about it. But there is there's someone I follow on Instagram, and they posted a diary in a portion of a diary writing from Laken Riley, who was killed by a vicious man who should not be breathing right now. So the idea that we're going to imprison and pay for him for life is just beyond the pale. What manner of country are we at this point in time where the life of a killer would be spared when he took such a precious soul who deserved nothing of what she received? This is the part that gets me, and I'm waiting to see true men step forward and for justice to actually be known in our country. We have a bunch of perverts running things right now who think that it is wise to behave in such a manner. But her dad read an excerpt, I gather, from her diary in court, and it was a letter to her future husband, talking about how she was living her life right now, and how she was sowing into a relationship with God and living a pure life and praying for him, hoping that their life together would be built upon the rock of Christ. And some of this is my own words, but that she was working hard to become a wife that he could be proud of, and praying that he was doing the same in the sense of becoming a husband. Right when I talk about this at Let's Go, of course, why not? But nonetheless, and it just absolutely hammers me every time I think about it. And that we so often misunderstand how much God values purity and life and love and liberty. And we risk it for such stupid things. And here's this young woman out for a jog, loving God, looking forward to her future, and her life is taken from her. Yes, it's true that she's in the arms of her Savior. I have no doubt about that. But isn't there a point that we should be challenged in our lives, in the way that we are living, in the way that we understand life? What we're yielding to God, what we're willing to surrender. Doesn't it cause us pause and question that in this diary, this young woman writes of the purity that she's attempting to live and give God everything, and how foolish we are regularly. If you want to know if it troubles me, it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. And it makes me understand this world all the more. And some would say, why would God let that happen? Listen, bad things happen, kids. They happen. People suffer. Good people suffer. This world hates purity. It hates righteousness. It hates love. It hates joy. It hates peace. It lusts after death. It wants to meet its end. But God is faithful, and his patience is salvation. I will see y'all tonight at 6 o'clock. We will pick up at point 2 and work our way through point 3. But I do love you, and I care greatly for you. And I want to see the will of God be known to you and in you and through you. Take care, you guys. See you soon. Hang in there.